The children were still alive when the soldiers heard the crying. For weeks, the Colombian jungle had swallowed every sound before it could lead anyone to them. Helicopters had passed above the canopy. Searchers had found a baby bottle, used diapers, scraps of fruit, and small footprints pressed into mud. But the four siblings kept moving just ahead of rescue, hidden beneath leaves, rain, insects, and trees so thick that daylight reached the ground in broken pieces. Then, on June 9, 2023, men from the search teams saw them. 13-year-old Leslie Mucutuy was there with Solange, Tien Noriel, and baby Christine. Their bodies were thin and marked by bites. But after 40 days alone in the Amazon, all four children were breathing. The flight that carried them into the jungle had left Araraquara on the morning of May 1st, 2023. It was a small Cessna 206 crossing a remote stretch of southern Colombia, where forest ran for miles in every direction. On board were 7 people: the pilot, Hernando Murcia Morales, an indigenous leader, Herman Mendoza Hernandez, Magdalena Mucutuy Valencia, and Magdalena's 4 children, Leslie, Solange, Tien Noriel, and Kristen. Leslie was 13, Solange was 9, Tien was 4. Kristen was only 11 months old. They were members of the Huitoto indigenous community, and they were traveling towards San Jose del Guaviare. The trip was supposed to move them out of isolation and danger. Instead, shortly after takeoff, the pilot reported engine trouble. The aircraft lost power over a landscape with no safe place to land. Beneath it was uninterrupted rainforest, with ground hidden from the sky. The plane went down nose first into the canopy. The crash tore open the aircraft and killed the adults. The pilot died. Herman Mendoza died. Magdalena, the children's mother, died as well, though later accounts from family said she may have survived briefly after impact and told the children to leave. What is certain is that the adults could not lead them out. When the wreck settled into the trees, 4 children were left in the jungle with no map, no radio, no adult, and no idea how far rescue might be. Leslie became the leader because there was no one else. At 13, she was still a child, but she had knowledge that mattered in the forest. She knew some edible fruits. She knew enough to avoid things that could poison them. She understood that the jungle was not empty. It had food, water, shelter, and danger. Her younger siblings depended on her for every decision. Solange could help, but she was 9. Tien was small, frightened, and hungry. Kristen was a baby who needed to be carried, fed, cleaned, and kept alive hour after hour. For the first days, the wreck gave them a small chance. Searchers later learned the children had found farinha, a cassava flour that had been aboard the plane. It was dry, familiar, and safe to eat. Leslie fed the others from it as long as it lasted. They also found fruit in the forest, and at times they ate seeds. Rainwater and streams kept them from dying of thirst, but drinking in the jungle was never simple. Water could be dirty. Insects were everywhere. The heat and humidity turned small problems into serious ones. The children did not stay beside the wreck. Whether because of fear, instinct, or their mother's final instruction, as relatives described it, they moved away into the forest. That choice made them harder to find, but it may also have kept them from waiting beside bodies and wreckage while animals, hunger, and shock closed in. The search began quickly, but the jungle fought the rescuers too. From the air, the canopy hid everything. A plane could pass over wreckage and see only green. On the ground, search teams had to move through thick vegetation, flooded areas, mud, insects, snakes, and heat. The operation grew into a large effort involving Colombian soldiers, indigenous volunteers, aircraft, and search dogs. It became known as Operation Hope. For more than 2 weeks, the searchers looked for the missing plane. On May 16th, they found the wreckage. The bodies of the 3 adults were recovered. But the children were not there. That discovery changed the entire search. It meant the children had survived the crash and walked away. It also meant they had already been alone in the Amazon for more than 2 weeks. From that point, every clue mattered. Searchers found footprints, a shelter made from branches, diapers, a bottle, and fruit with bites taken from it. These traces proved the children were alive after the crash, but they also showed how fragile the rescue had become. A footprint could be days old. A bitten fruit could mean the children were close, or it could mean they had already moved far away through terrain that erased signs almost as soon as they appeared. Helicopters flew over the forest, broadcasting recorded messages from the children's grandmother in the Huitoto language, telling them to stay in one place. Rescue teams dropped food and supplies. But the children were small, exhausted, and afraid. Beneath the canopy, sound broke apart. At night, insects and animal noise filled the trees. During the day, heat pressed down while rain soaked everything. Leslie kept them alive. She cared for Kristen, who turned 1 year old during the ordeal. She moved the group through the forest, found food where she could, and kept the younger children close. The siblings reportedly used tree trunks and natural cover for shelter. Their bodies weakened. They lost weight. Their skin showed insect bites and irritation. Still, they stayed together. 4 children in the Amazon had almost no margin for mistakes, but Leslie did not let the family break apart. On June 9th, the search teams finally found the children. They were in a small clearing, weak but conscious. The baby was with them, and the rescuers handled all 4 carefully. Images from the rescue showed soldiers and indigenous searchers gathered around them on the forest floor, faces marked by exhaustion and relief. One child reportedly said their mother had died. Another said they were hungry. The children were lifted out by helicopter and flown for medical care. In Bogotá, they were treated at a military hospital for dehydration, malnutrition, insect bites, and the effects of 40 days exposed to the jungle. Relatives gathered there, including their grandparents. Colombia's president announced their rescue as a national moment of joy, but for the children themselves, survival came attached to loss. They had not only endured the forest, they had watched the adults vanish from their lives in a crash that left them alone. As the days passed, more of their story came out in fragments. Leslie had pulled Kristen from the wreckage, according to family accounts. The children had eaten farina from the plain, then fruit and seeds from the forest. Leslie's knowledge, taught through family and indigenous life, had guided them through the places where an untrained adult might have made fatal mistakes. Their grandmother's voice had been sent over the jungle from aircraft, but the siblings kept moving until rescuers reached them. The story spread around the world because it sounded impossible. A 13-year-old girl had kept 3 younger children alive in the Amazon after a plane crash. A 9-year-old had endured it with her. A 4-year-old had walked through it. A baby had survived long enough to be found with siblings who refused to let her disappear. But the truth was not magic. It was knowledge, fear, hunger, endurance, and the bond between children who had no one left but each other. The Amazon did not spare them. It bit them, soaked them, starved them, and hid them from rescue. Leslie answered with everything she had learned before the crash and every choice she could still make after it. 40 days after the Cessna fell from the sky, the Mucutuy siblings came out alive. The adults aboard the plane did not. Their mother did not. The forest kept the wreck, the search, and the long days of hunger. But it did not keep Leslie, Solange, Tia Noriel, and Christine. They were found together, worn down and frightened, but alive because the oldest child became the protector, and the younger ones held on until the voices calling for them finally reached the right place in the trees. Thank you for listening to Horrifying Survival Stories. Subscribe for more stories of those who faced the impossible and lived.